The galaxy had always watched humanity with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Their homeworld Earth was known as a Deathworld, a planet where survival was a constant battle against nature itself, a place where every step was fraught with danger and where life clung to existence. With fierce determination for centuries, humans had kept to themselves in the grand theater of the galaxy, but that would change in an instant. The Zarnak were not prepared for what they encountered when they launched their surprise invasion of the human colonies on the outer rim. Their ships arrived without warning, decimating the defensive outposts and turning entire cities into ashes. Earth was a world that had long been underestimated by the Galactic Council, but the Zarnak saw opportunity in weakness and believed they could subjugate the humans as they had with so many lesser species. They were wrong. The initial strike was swift and brutal, but it was also calculated. The Zarnak wanted to overwhelm the humans before they could organize a response. They believed humans would run or beg for mercy, but humanity had no intention of surrendering, no intention of showing weakness, not anymore. Admiral Aisha Kenzo stood on the bridge of the flagship of the human defense fleet, the Vanguard. She stared out at the stars, wondering how it had come to this. They had always been the ones to hold back, always seeking peaceful solutions, even when provoked, but this time things were different. She watched the reports come in one after another, the destruction of colonies that had once thrived, the loss of lives that could never be replaced, and for the first time in her life, she felt something she had not allowed herself to feel before: anger. The Zarnak thought they could break humanity, but they were wrong, and in that moment, Kenzo knew what had to be done. The galaxy had misunderstood humanity for too long. They had been merciful, but no more. It was time to stop running, to stop being the prey, to stop begging for peace. Humanity would fight for survival, and if that meant burning the galaxy to the ground, so be it. The order was simple and final: no mercy. Kenzo's voice echoed through the comms of every ship in the fleet, every soldier on the ground, and every officer in the command centers across the colonies. We are no longer a species that asks for permission. We fight for survival, and we will never beg again. The fleet of Zarnak ships, hanging in orbit above the wreckage of the outer colonies, had no time to react. The first strike from the humans was a shockwave of fury lasers and missiles and weapons humanity had kept hidden for centuries, weapons forged by necessity, weapons that would now be unleashed without hesitation. The battle was like no other. The Zarnak couldn't adapt fast enough. Their tactics were predictable to the humans who had spent lifetimes adapting to a hostile environment themselves. They had fought creatures far worse than anything the Zarnak could throw at them. What followed was a symphony of destruction. The human fleet smashed through the Zarnak defenses as if they were paper, their ships flying with a grace and efficiency that made even the most seasoned warlords of the galaxy take notice. But it wasn't just their ships that fought, it was the people themselves. The soldiers on the ground fought with a primal rage. They knew no fear, their hearts hardened in the furnace of Earth's brutal evolution. They fought like animals who had been cornered by predators, and the Zarnak were the prey now. The humans had shown the galaxy something that no one had ever expected. Mercy was gone. Humanity had chosen to stop being merciful, and from that day forward, the universe would remember who the Deathworlders truly were. The aftermath of the Zarnak invasion left a burning imprint on humanity's collective psyche. Earth's colonies had been reduced to ash, and the lives lost could never be returned. Yet, despite the cost, something fundamental had shifted in the human spirit. It was no longer about defense or survival. It was about retribution, power, and a willingness to confront the universe on their terms. Admiral Aisha Kenzo stood before the remnants of Earth's High Council, her face resolute, her eyes unblinking. The council room was filled with the weight of both grief and anticipation. The leaders of Earth's most powerful colonies were gathered, their faces grim but hopeful, unsure whether to mourn or prepare for the new path ahead. The Zarnak thought us weak, Kenzo said, her voice unwavering. They believed we could be subdued by force or trickery. What they failed to understand is that mercy is a choice, and we've chosen to stop making it. A murmur rippled through the room. The tension was thick, but Kenzo's words were undeniable. They had fought, and they had won, but at what cost? The once proud colonies lay in ruin, entire cities lost to the Zarnak assault. And still, despite the destruction, humanity stood strong, and that strength came at a price, one they were now unwilling to pay in full. Kenzo's voice softened, but only for a moment. The galaxy has seen what happens when we are pushed too far, and they will remember. She paused, meeting the eyes of each council member. We will not beg. We will not retreat. We will no longer be at the mercy of those who think they can dictate our fate. Some of the council members exchanged uneasy glances. A few were old enough to remember the days when humanity had fought tooth and nail just to be recognized by the galactic community, fighting with the hope of eventual peace. Others had grown up with the idea that humanity could be an example of what could be achieved through diplomacy and unity. But now, a new doctrine was forming, one based on total self-sufficiency and ruthless defense. Admiral Kenzo's voice rang out again, now a call to arms. We will not allow ourselves to be crushed under the boot of those who see us as weak. We are Deathworlders, and from this day forward, the galaxy will know us for what we truly are. The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled in. Then one of the older council members, a former diplomat named Eros Vass, stood to speak. What you're proposing is madness. We fought for peace. We've negotiated with species who would sooner see us wiped out. If we abandon mercy, if we embrace this savagery, what does that make us? Will we become like the Zarnak, preying on those who cannot defend themselves? Kenzo met his gaze, her eyes sharp. No, we will not become them, but we will not kneel either. We will show the galaxy that peace does not come through submission. It comes through strength, and we will wield that strength until there is no one left to challenge us. A wave of discomfort swept through the room, but none could deny the logic in her words. Peace had always been fragile, and humanity had been naive to think it could maintain it forever. The council agreed reluctantly, and a new order was set in motion. In the weeks that followed, the human fleets were rebuilt, repurposed, and upgraded. Earth's war machines, once kept as a last line of defense, were now poised to become a symbol of humanity's might. They would no longer wait for the next attack. They would strike first, whenever and wherever necessary. The galaxy watched as humanity transitioned from humble survivors to fierce predators. The universal message was clear. Mercy had ended, and a new era of human dominance was beginning. But not everyone would stand idly by. A coalition of alien species, some once sympathetic to humanity's cause, began to prepare for what they feared would come, a galaxy in which humanity's wrath was the ultimate currency. And so, humanity's true journey had just begun. The galaxy, once an arena of fragile peace, was now shifting into something far darker. As humanity embraced its new path, the message was spreading like wildfire. The Zarnak, who had underestimated them, were now retreating into the farthest corners of space, licking their wounds and recalibrating their strategy. But the shockwaves of the humans' swift vengeance were felt across every sector of the galaxy, and those who had once seen humanity as little more than a nuisance now saw them as a force to be reckoned with. The Karvash, a calculating and politically savvy insectoid race, had long been observers of humanity. They had watched their ascension with a certain cold curiosity. The Karvash, known for their mastery of negotiation and intrigue, had maintained a neutral stance in the galactic conflicts, carefully keeping out of the fray. But now, with humanity stepping into the role of a relentless power, the Karvash were left with a difficult decision. Should they act to curb humanity's growing influence or try to ally with them before they were consumed by the whirlwind? In a highly secretive meeting, the Karvash Council sent one of their most trusted diplomats, Sarax, to Earth in an effort to maintain peace. His mission was clear: offer humanity a treaty, one that would allow the Karvash to avoid becoming another target in the human crusade for dominance. The Karvash were not fools. They understood the weight of Kenzo's declaration. If humanity saw no mercy for the Zarnak, how long before they turned their gaze upon them? Admiral Kenzo, now at the helm of a militarized Earth, met Sarax in the sleek and imposing United Earth headquarters. The Karvish diplomat arrived with his usual air of measured calm, his many eyes studying every detail of the room as though dissecting it for weaknesses. The humans, in contrast, were direct and unyielding. There was no longer any veneer of diplomacy. The message was simple. Humanity's demands were not open to negotiation. "I have come to ensure peace," Sarax began, his voice smooth and careful. "The Karvash offer you an alliance, one of mutual benefit. We seek no conflict with humanity, Admiral Kenzo. We are far more inclined to diplomacy than war." Kenzo's eyes never left Sarax. "You offer diplomacy because you fear us. You fear the price of your own failure. Let me make this clear to you, Sarax. We did not choose war. We were forced into it. But now there is no going back. The age of mercy is over. It was not a privilege for the galaxy, it was a liability." Sarax, sensing the unrelenting finality in her voice, steeled himself. "But if you continue down this path, you will have no allies left. Your enemies will be too many. The galaxy is a large place, Admiral. Even humanity cannot fight everyone." Kenzo leaned forward, her voice low but dripping with a cold, lethal certainty. "You misunderstand. We're not asking for allies. We're simply offering a choice: submit or be swept aside." A chill ran through the room. The words hung heavy, their meaning clear. The Karvash, despite their best efforts to disguise it, could not hide their fear. Their alliance with humanity was now a matter of survival, not mutual respect. But this was only the beginning. The message humanity had sent to the galaxy was not one of cooperation, but of ruthless retribution. As the Karvash left Earth, their retreat was swift. They had no choice but to prepare their people for the inevitable, either fall in line with humanity's new order or risk being obliterated. Meanwhile, whispers began to grow throughout the galaxy. Other species were preparing. The peaceful races who had once been part of the Galactic Council now saw the writing on the wall. Humanity had chosen to embrace its savage heritage, and with it came the terrifying realization that the Deathworlders were not just surviving. They were about to dominate. The universe had been warned, but would it be enough? Would anyone dare to challenge the humans again, knowing what they had become? Only time would tell. The galaxy was beginning to change. The Karvash were not the only ones who felt the seismic shift brought by humanity's newfound ruthlessness. As word of humanity's uncompromising strength spread, it was not just the smaller species that began to take notice. The largest and most powerful factions in the galaxy were now forced to reconsider their long-standing assumptions about Earth's role in the universe. They had fought humanity weak, fractured, and dependent on diplomacy. Now, humanity was a threat, a force that would strike with deadly precision and without hesitation. In the shadow of this growing fear, a far more insidious enemy began to emerge from the depths of galactic space. The Centauri, a race of biomechanical entities that existed in the fringes of known space. Silent, deadly, and with an intelligence that rivaled the galaxy's most advanced species, the Centauri had long remained in the dark, observing and manipulating events from afar. They had no need for grand battles or flashy displays of power. Their true strength lay in subterfuge, infiltration, and control. They had watched humanity's rise, and they had seen the humans transition from fragile peacekeepers to relentless conquerors. It was not fear of their strength that motivated the Centauri. It was fear of their unpredictability. The Centauri had long maintained a carefully orchestrated web of influence, ensuring that no species could ever rise to challenge their quiet dominion. Now, they saw humanity's refusal to be controlled as the greatest threat to their existence. Their solution was not to confront humanity directly. They had learned long ago that direct conflict was not the way to subjugate a species like the humans. Instead, they would infiltrate, they would manipulate, and they would turn humanity's newfound allies into their greatest foes. Their agents, hidden among the highest ranks of human society, began to work their plan in secret. The first sign came in the form of whispers in the dark. High-ranking human officials began to receive strange messages, cryptic warnings of betrayal from within. Information was leaked to the public, small, seemingly insignificant pieces, but enough to sow distrust among humanity's once unified leadership. These were not the acts of ordinary spies. They were calculated, deliberate, and designed to destabilize humanity's rise to power. But humanity had one advantage that the Centauri had underestimated. Humans had fought and survived in a world where trust was a rare commodity. Admiral Kenzo, having witnessed the devastating cost of mercy, was no fool. She had already suspected that something was wrong. When the first assassination attempt on her life was made, it became clear that humanity was under assault from an enemy far more dangerous than any external threat they had faced before. The Centauri had placed sleeper agents deep within the human ranks, manipulating key military officers and political leaders. They were sowing chaos from within, hoping to fracture the unity that had been so crucial to humanity's rise. As the unrest spread, more humans began to fall prey to their influence, slowly at first, then with terrifying speed. Kenzo's response was immediate. The moment she discovered the true nature of the Centauri's plot, she moved to shut it down with the ferocity of a cornered predator. With a fleet that had already learned to strike first, humanity turned the tables. Cities once home to Centauri sympathizers were raided with precision. Every corner of the human colonies swept clean of their presence. There was no mercy, no negotiation, no room for compromise. The Centauri had never encountered an enemy like this. They were used to playing the game of shadows, manipulating weak-willed species into submission. But humans were different. The Deathworlders fought with a ferocity that was born of survival, and they didn't hesitate when faced with an existential threat. Every Centauri infiltrator was hunted down, every last trace of their influence eradicated. Humanity's war for survival had expanded beyond external enemies to an internal war against those who would destroy them from within. In the aftermath of the Centauri purge, humanity emerged stronger, more unified, and more feared than ever. The galaxy had seen what the Deathworlders were capable of when pushed to the brink, and they would remember it forever. The Centauri had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they would pay the price. The message was unmistakable. Humanity would not be broken, and anyone who tried would face their wrath. The galaxy trembled. Humanity's swift and merciless purging of the Centauri had sent shockwaves through every sector. In the span of mere months, the Deathworlders had not only eradicated a covert threat, but had also proven to every species that they would not hesitate to defend their newfound position of power. The Centauri had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to fight, and to survive. But there were other forces, other species that were also taking note. While many had once hoped humanity's rise was just a fleeting anomaly, it had become clear that the Deathworlders were here to stay. And the universe was changing because of it. The Valor, an ancient and highly intelligent race of long-lived energy beings, had always been the silent observers of galactic affairs. They had once quietly watched humanity's slow ascension into the broader galactic community, never intervening, preferring instead to remain aloof from the troubles of mortal species. But with humanity's recent actions, they began to reconsider their stance. They had long seen themselves as the keepers of balance, the stewards of cosmic equilibrium. To them, the sudden shift in humanity's behavior was not just a threat. It was an aberration that could upset the entire fabric of the galaxy. The Valor did not act hastily. They were patient, their decisions guided by centuries of contemplation. But their agents, carefully placed within human colonies, began to report the growing unease. Humanity's unrelenting drive for power, their unflinching refusal to compromise, was troubling. The Deathworlders had chosen a path of destruction, and it was clear that if left unchecked, they could very well plunge the entire galaxy into an age of war. A council was called, composed of the most powerful and influential figures within the Valor Collective. Their leader, Kithar, a being whose form was a shimmering aurora of pure light, addressed the assembly in a tone that held the weight of ages. The humans have cast aside the old ways of diplomacy and mercy. They are becoming something dangerous. We cannot allow this unchecked growth. The balance of the cosmos must be maintained. We must intervene before they become too powerful. There was a murmur of agreement among the council. The Valor were not a species to act out of fear. Their every move was calculated, measured against the vast expanse of time. But they were also wise enough to recognize the danger when it appeared. And humanity, with their unpredictability and newfound hunger for dominance, were now the greatest threat to the balance of power in the galaxy. Kfar, in his infinite wisdom, decided that it was time for the Valor to meet humanity face to face. They would approach the humans not with warships or weapons, but with a proposition, one that they hoped would be seen as both a warning and an invitation to return to a more balanced path. The envoy was chosen. A small but highly influential group of Valor emissaries, led by Kfar himself, would journey to Earth. Their objective was clear: to confront humanity with the reality of their actions and to offer them a place in the galactic order. But on the Valor's terms, they would need to curtail their unrelenting aggression, to return to a more peaceful existence, or face the consequences of being cast into isolation, excluded from the galactic fold. The message from the Valor was delivered swiftly, and the humans were quick to respond. Admiral Kenzo, never one to shy away from a challenge, met the Valor emissaries on the surface of Earth's capital, surrounded by her most trusted generals and advisors. The shimmering beings of pure energy stood before her, their forms undulating with a serene but undeniably commanding presence. They were the embodiment of the universe's ancient wisdom. "We have come to offer you a choice, Admiral Kenzo," Kfar's voice echoed, not with words, but through a transmission of thought that seemed to resonate in the very core of the human mind. "The path you walk is one of destruction, but there is still time to change course. Join us in peace, or stand alone as an outcast in a galaxy that will not tolerate your excesses." Kenzo, unwavering in her resolve, looked the Valor leader in the eye. "We do not seek your peace, Kfar. We never did. We chose to survive, and now we choose to rule. Mercy is a relic, and humanity is done with it. You can try to contain us, but understand this: we will not kneel." Her words reverberated with such raw power that even the Valor felt the weight of them. They had underestimated humanity's determination, but now they understood. Humanity would not bend. Not now, not ever. With that, the Valor emissaries departed, leaving behind a tense silence. The message had been delivered, but it was clear that the rift between the two races was too wide to bridge. Humanity's refusal to compromise had sealed their fate. And so, the universe would watch as humanity's influence continued to grow, unchecked and unrelenting, while the Valor, and every other species, wondered what the Deathworlders would do next. The galaxy was on edge. Humanity's refusal to yield to the Valor's offer had sent ripples through the cosmos. The Deathworlders had made their choice, and it was clear now. They were no longer seeking peace, nor were they interested in joining a galactic order that demanded submission. They were carving out their own path, and every species, every faction, had to decide how they would respond to this new, unpredictable force. The Valor, once so sure of their role as the guardians of cosmic balance, now found themselves in a difficult position. Humanity's rise threatened everything they had worked to maintain: a harmonious galaxy governed by wisdom, patience, and quiet diplomacy. The Valor had tried to reach out, to guide humanity toward a more peaceful existence, but the humans had rejected them. In doing so, the Deathworlders had ignited a new and dangerous chapter in galactic history. In the heart of the galaxy, a shadowy meeting was convened between the leaders of the most powerful species in the universe: the Tenthar, a race of warlords who ruled with iron fists; the Nor, a nomadic species of energy manipulators; and the elusive Shalkari, the galaxy's most secretive and feared assassins, all gathered under a single urgent banner. Humanity had refused the Valor's peace, and now it was time to decide whether to confront this new threat head-on or to adopt a more subtle strategy. The Xanthar warlord, Sarnuk, was the first to speak. "We cannot allow this. Humanity's hunger for dominance will not stop with the Valor. If we do not act now, they will become an unstoppable force, one that will devour everything in their path. He was met with murmurs of agreement from the others in the room. The Nor, always cautious and calculating, had watched the humans rise with growing concern. Their ability to adapt to warfare so quickly, their refusal to back down, made them dangerous. Yet their leader, Vena, remained silent for a moment, contemplating the larger picture. To strike them head-on is to play into their hands. Vena said finally, her voice cool but firm. The humans are too many, too fierce. We would lose. Instead, we must undermine them, sow distrust, fracture their unity. That is the way to deal with them. The Shalkari representative, a slender figure cloaked in shadow, shifted slightly, their voice barely above a whisper. And if they cannot be divided, what then? The question was heavy, suggesting a far more dangerous path. Shall we attempt to kill them in the dark corners of the galaxy, as we have done with so many before? Or shall we try another way? Sarnak's expression hardened. No more games. We strike. The humans cannot be allowed to continue unchallenged. The room grew tense, the weight of the decision pressing down on the council. Humanity had made their stance clear, and now the galaxy had a choice: face them in battle or try to outwit them with subtler tactics. The council's internal conflict reflected the broader dilemma that was sweeping across the galaxy. Many were still unsure how to deal with humanity. Some viewed them as a necessary evil to be crushed before they grew too powerful. Others saw an opportunity to tame or manipulate them. Meanwhile, Admiral Kenzo, on Earth, was preparing for the inevitable. She had expected the Valor's rejection to spark fear among the galaxy's power brokers, but what she didn't expect was the sheer speed at which the coalition of species had begun to form against them. The news had arrived quickly. She could see the signs of mounting hostility from multiple factions. Humanity had become the focus of every major power, not the Valor, not the Centaur, and not the galaxy itself. They were Deathworlders, and they would bend the galaxy to their will. The first strike came without warning. A fleet of warships, massive and heavily armed, descended upon one of the outer rim colonies that had once been a peaceful haven for trade. The coalition of galactic powers, led by the Centaur, had moved quickly in the wake of their council's decision. They had underestimated humanity's speed, their ability to mobilize and strike with precision. But now, with their armadas crossing the stars at full force, they would see that humanity was ready for war. No one had prepared for the sheer ferocity of what followed. Admiral Kenzo had anticipated the attack. The moment the Galactic Coalition decided to target humanity, her fleets were already prepared. Human warships, sleek and deadly, emerged from the shadows of distant planets, converging at blistering speed. Earth's military was no longer just a force of defense. It was now the hammer of the galaxy, the instrument of an unstoppable will. The opening salvo was devastating. Human ships, designed with years of brutal combat experience in mind, tore through the coalition's forces with ruthless efficiency. The Kenfar, despite their overwhelming numbers, were caught off guard by the sheer unpredictability of humanity's tactics. Their warships, once considered the most advanced in the galaxy, were torn apart by weapons designed specifically to exploit their weaknesses. Humanity's engineers had spent years studying the enemy's technology, preparing for this exact moment. The result was a decisive blow to the invading fleet. The Nor, known for their control over energy and their abilities to manipulate matter, attempted to retaliate by using their powerful energy blasts to disable the human ship's shields. But humanity's engineers had anticipated this as well. As the Nor unleashed their energy bolts, the human fleets deployed countermeasures that absorbed and redirected the strikes, turning the Nor's weapons back on them with deadly accuracy. On the front lines, Kenzo's forces were everywhere. She moved from battle to battle, coordinating her forces with precision. Every ship, every fighter, was synchronized in the chaos of war. The human soldiers, having fought and survived in the harshest of environments, were a force unlike any other. They fought not just for victory, but for survival, and it showed in their every maneuver, every attack. The galaxy's best-trained soldiers, the Tynthar and the Nor, were struggling to keep up. And then the Shalkari appeared. The galaxy's most feared assassins, masters of stealth and subterfuge, arrived on the battlefield, hoping to turn the tide. Their fleets, made up of cloaked ships and shadowy figures, had always been a source of terror. But humanity had not underestimated them, not for a moment. Kenzo's forces had prepared for their arrival, and the moment the Shalkari made their move, they were met with an unrelenting barrage of fire. They had hoped to strike from the shadows, but now there were no shadows left. The Deathworlders had learned to fight in ways the galaxy's finest assassins could never predict. Kenzo watched from her flagship, her gaze unflinching as her fleets dismantled the invaders. The Nor, the Tynthar, the Shalkari, they were all learning the same painful lesson. Humanity was not something to be feared in passing. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species that had broken free of the shackles of mercy and diplomacy. The coalition had chosen to wage war against them, but now they were fighting for survival, scrambling to pick up the pieces of their shattered fleets. It didn't take long for the coalition to understand that this wasn't a battle they could win. Their losses mounted by the hour, their ships crippled, their resources drained. On the battlefield, it was no longer about who had the most ships or the largest armies. It was about who could endure, and humanity, with its ferocity and refusal to yield, was proving it could endure longer than anyone had ever anticipated. The alliance between the Tynthar, the Nor, and the Shalkari quickly began to fray. The cost of the conflict was staggering, and there were whispers in the ranks of these great powers that perhaps they had made a terrible mistake in underestimating humanity. Back on Earth, Admiral Kenzo stood before the holographic map of the galaxy. Her fleets had not only held their ground, they had pushed forward, striking at the heart of coalition territories. Humanity had made its presence known, but this was only the beginning. The galaxy was still out there, still full of enemies who would not rest until humanity was brought to heel. But Kenzo was undeterred. The Deathworlders had made their choice, and there was no going back. She had seen the results of mercy, and it had nearly cost them everything. Now, the galaxy would know the price of defiance. It was a price they would pay in full. The galaxy was forever changed. What had begun as a simple rejection of galactic norms had transformed into a war that shook the very foundations of interstellar power. Humanity, the so-called Deathworlders, had proven that their rise was no mere fluke. They had become a juggernaut, a force of nature that bent the galaxy to their will. The battlefields, once marked by the arrogance of ancient species, now burned with the fire of humanity's relentless push for dominance. Admiral Kenzo stood before the holographic map of the galaxy once more, her eyes scanning the rapidly shifting territories. The coalition had shattered, its forces scattered across the stars. The Tynthar, once the undisputed rulers of the war zones, had been driven back, their warships reduced to floating husks. The Nor, once masters of energy manipulation, had been forced into hiding, their power not enough to stand against the ingenuity and sheer ruthlessness of human tactics. The Shalkari, the galaxy's silent assassins, had learned the hard way that no darkness could hide them from humanity's unyielding pursuit. Kenzo knew the war was not over. There were still pockets of resistance, and there were still factions that would never accept humanity's dominance. But one thing was certain. Humanity had proven that it would no longer be ignored. They were no longer just survivors. They were the new rulers of the galaxy, and any species that challenged that rule would pay the price. The Valor, who had once tried to manipulate humanity into submission, had watched as their grand plans unraveled. The ancient energy beings, long accustomed to maintaining the balance of the galaxy, had underestimated the sheer unpredictability of the Deathworlders. They had offered peace, but humanity had refused. Now the Valor had no choice but to reconsider their stance. They could no longer treat humanity as a species to be guided. They had become a species that could no longer be controlled. Kthar, the leader of the Valor, stood alone in his chamber, his form flickering with the pulsing light of his being. He could sense the change in the air, a shift in the cosmic energy that surrounded him. The galaxy was at a crossroads. The Deathworlders had proven their strength, their resolve, and their refusal to compromise. They had become something more than just a species. They had become a force of nature. And yet, Cathar knew that the Valor's role in the galaxy was far from over. They had once been the unseen hand, the quiet guides, the keepers of cosmic order. But now the galaxy was fractured. Species that had once lived in fragile peace were now scrambling to secure their place in the new order that humanity had forged. There was no going back to the old ways. Kenzo's voice echoed in the Valor leader's mind, a clear and unyielding signal that no diplomacy would be offered, no mercy extended. "We are not your allies," she had said simply. "We are not your tools, your servants, or your equals. We are the ones who decide our future, and we choose to rule." Her words had resounded like a hammer striking the very core of the galaxy. The Valor had known many things, but they had never known a species like this. A species that would not be swayed, that would not kneel, that would not compromise. They had underestimated humanity's fire, and now the consequences were clear. Humanity's fleets were not just defenders. They were conquerors. They moved across the galaxy, annexing planets, establishing dominions, and forging alliances not out of necessity, but out of strategy. With each victory, humanity's reputation grew, and the old powers began to bend their knees, not out of choice, but because they had no other option. As the weeks passed, more species surrendered to humanity's overwhelming might. No longer were they seen as fragile. No longer were they regarded as a weak species clinging to their place in the cosmos. They were Deathworlders, and every species would remember the day they chose to stop being merciful. The final battle came when the last of the resistance fleets attempted a desperate push to reclaim one of humanity's colonies. The fighting was brutal, but it was clear from the start who would emerge victorious. Kenzo's fleet, now reinforced and honed by years of war, cut through the remnants of the resistance with cold, surgical precision. Humanity stood as the undisputed power in the galaxy. There were no more negotiations, no more peace talks. There was only rule, and all those who had once underestimated humanity knew one thing now. The Deathworlders had chosen their place, and it was at the top of the galactic hierarchy. The message was clear, written in the ashes of countless warships and the remains of broken empires. The galaxy would either bow to humanity or face total annihilation.